When the parks open up for the very first time on July 11th, after over 100 days of being closed, I know it's been that long, it's hard to imagine, but it has been that long, we're all going to be smiling as we make our way back into the park. There is no doubt in anyone's mind that when we go back to Walt Disney World, it's going to be a unique time. It's not going to be like the normal Walt Disney World that we know and love. It's going to be a little bit different for a little while, not just for like a couple days, for probably several months. But eventually, we will get back to that normal, and it's going to feel even better when we do. But for now, we have this kind of interim time. We've discussed what the parks will look like when they reopen. We've discussed the social distancing and the masks and even those resorts when they reopen, and that new reservation system that you can use to get into the parks. But one area that I want to dive a little bit deeper into today is transportation options at Walt Disney World during this unique time. As of right now, we know that the buses and monorails will likely be running as we walk into the parks for the very first time, but we haven't heard too much about the gondolas or the boats at Walt Disney World. And today I want to dive a little bit deeper into all of these options, what social distancing will look like while on board, and even a sneak peek of something that I caught while driving the other day. Now let's start first with the Disney buses, and most of this information is not confirmed. I should note that as I jump into this. What are they going to look like when we get back to it? Now, at the time of filming, the distance that you need between individuals and every space on buses and the rides all over is still required right now, and that means on the Disney buses as well. So that also means we're going to see social distancing on those Disney buses. That's all well and good, but how is it going to work on board the Disney buses? Hypothetically, I would imagine we're going to see the bus depots change in their layout entirely. Imagine maybe waiting for a bus from the Magic Kingdom back to your resort. Just as an example, usually you have those lines that kind of go back and forth and you stand in these lines. I would imagine first and foremost we're going to see those distance markers between the lines, so you can't stand right next to anyone else, and there are going to be areas where you have to stand kind of 6 feet apart from the next party. Now that one may be a little bit obvious, but what about on the bus themselves? This is where it gets a little bit more complicated. The way I envision it, and again this is hypothetical, there's either a cast member standing by at every single bus depot all around Walt Disney World, or the drivers themselves will coordinate with guests to ensure that all social distancing is met on board the buses. From the information that I've been gathering in recent days, it looks like the buses themselves will actually have cordoned off sections where family members can sit next to each other, or if you're traveling by yourself, you can sit by yourself, socially distant from others, in the bus. Let's imagine it's the cast members standing by at each bus depot. I think that one makes a little bit more sense. They see the guests kind of making their way in, they make sure the guests are staying 6 feet apart, and then they start to coordinate, and they say to, while you're waiting for the bus, they say to the first guest, okay, how many people in your traveling party? Let's pretend it's 2. Okay, you're going to be in seat section number 1. Then the next party, how many people in your traveling party? Let's say 3. You're going to be in seat section number 4, just as an example. And then when you get on the bus, you know what number to look for when you get on board. It makes a lot of sense. In many ways, this does solve a big problem. However, it also creates a little bit of confusion, because what if you have a party of 10? How are you going to fit on board the bus? I would imagine that Disney's going to try and follow the order of who got there first. That would make a lot of sense. But they're also going to try and keep that social distancing with families. So let's say you do have a party of 10. I would imagine they'll maybe put 3 of you together, and then 3 of you in another section, and then 3 of you in another section, just as an example. Then one person by themselves, perhaps. It's hard to know at this time. But something like that, so that they can keep parties and maybe in the same bus, but separated just a little bit, because they don't want to configure the buses in different ways as the parties keep coming through. Okay, that's one solution, but what about the wait time? Many of us know the wait times for buses can be extremely long, especially when you have to catch the Magical Express. I can attest to that one. They can take anywhere between maybe 20-25 minutes to get there. During this time period, if we only have, let's just throw out a number of 20 people per bus, and you can't really pack the buses full, won't that mean that the waits are so much longer? Maybe, but I doubt it. During this very unique time at Walt Disney World, it's going to be a lot less crowded than we're used to. It's just the facts of how it's going to be for a little while, but then it will get back to normal. Eventually. We can look forward to that day, but for now, it's going to be a lighter crowd. So that means the line won't be nearly as long. Now let's pretend for a moment that there's just a random day within the first week of Disney opening where lots of people want to come and see Walt Disney World after it reopens. It's definitely something that may happen. In that situation, don't forget, only certain resorts will be open. And I believe personally that Disney's going to try and make this as efficient as possible, and they're going to bring as many buses as possible to these stations. So let's pretend for a moment only 20 people can get on the bus, and there are 100 people waiting. Maybe there are 2 buses waiting to get into that bus depot, and they can just keep loading the bus over and over and over again. More buses coming around because less resorts are open. It makes sense that they can kind of make that turnaround a lot faster. Now that's how I believe social distancing will happen on board the Disney buses, but what about the monorail? This one I have a feeling will be even simpler. Disney's going to have, again, cast members standing by to help guests, and they're going to say to whatever party size you have, let's pretend you have a party of 3. They say, okay, your party of 3, you're going to go in row number 10, just as an example, and you have one of those benches on board the monorail, just as an example. And then another party, let's say of 4, you're on bench number 11, just as an example. And both parties go into the monorail and sit on 2 different sides of those benches in that car. And that's it. And then they're distance apart. They got their masks on the whole time. We can all travel together. I think it's going to be that simple. Now for larger parties, it would be a little bit easier than the buses in my opinion, because let's pretend again a party of 10, you could say 4 of you in this row, 4 of you in this row, and 2 of you in this row over here, so that everyone's riding in the same monorail, not standing right next to each other, but at least going to the same destination at the same time. Thinking about those monorail cars for a moment, I would imagine they'll probably limit it to about, I would say probably 4 people per bench, maybe 5, but somewhere in there. Maybe if you have a child with you, then they'll say it's a little bit different, but maybe 4 to 5 on those benches at any given time, and before you know it, they'll be running really quick. Now the same question comes up here. Michael, do you think it will add to the length of the line and the wait that you'll have before you can get on the monorail? Simply because they can't really add more monorails to the line. They kind of can, but they have a set number of monorails. I totally get that. You go, let's pretend, at the TTC, and you're there, and they say, okay, you line up here before the monorail even gets there. They can start lining people up for your rows before the monorail gets there. It pulls into the station, you walk right in, they close the doors, off it goes. I think it's going to be more efficient, personally. Now, I have seen the idea online of that piece of plastic, or whatever it is, plastic sheet, in between those 2 benches on the monorail. I do not believe that's going to happen. I think that distance and keeping your mask on is going to be enough. Now, in terms of the boats at Walt Disney World, will they be running when the park reopens? That is tough to say. I hope they will. They should be relatively soon, at least after the parks reopen. We'll have to find out together, but I would imagine they'll have the same social distancing, where parties maybe sit together, and then there are areas where guests simply don't sit. They're kind of cordoned off so that guests can't sit there, and you take the boat to your destination. Now on to the one that I've been thinking about quite a bit, the Skyliner gondola. Will they be running when the parks first reopen? Right now, in my eyes, it looks promising. The reason for that, the other day I was driving back from Disney Springs, and I noticed something very interesting on the lines. As I was driving by, I saw gondola cars up above me. They were testing them even before those resorts and parks open. So exciting to see them. I'm so glad to see them back in the air. Now, you may have seen images of the gondolas before, and when you have in the past, you see lots and lots of gondolas filling all the lines here. I want to show something to you. If you take a look in my video that I took, and I was not looking at a camera while driving, this was just on my GoPro sitting on the dashboard. I was safe while taking this. I was driving, and you'll notice that there are only about maybe 5 or 6 gondola cars on the entire Skyliner area that I saw. There were no others. They were just testing a few at a time. Why? The reason for this may not mean anything. It may just mean that Disney's just trying to test the lines again. They want to make sure everything's safe, doing their safety checks. Perhaps they're testing how social distancing will be done. But on the other hand, it may also indicate that something very different will be coming to the Skyliner when we come back. Imagine for a moment the Skyliner running at full speed. You can get a lot of guests moving really, really quick. It's a super efficient mode of transportation, in my opinion. A lot of guests moving in that line super fast. That being said, knowing that we're not going to have as many guests and we're going to have to follow all the social distancing, what does that mean for the Skyliner gondola? Yes, there will definitely be distancing markers as you're waiting in line, and I would imagine that guests in certain parties will have entire gondola cars to themselves. Makes a lot of sense. But the distance between the cars is also something to consider. Since not as many guests are expected at first, perhaps there will be just in total less gondolas on the line. So instead of having them right next to each other, and I know that they're separated by glass, so it's not a social distancing thing here, it's just the amount of people that they can accommodate. Let's walk it through together. Let's imagine you're at Caribbean Beach, the main hub of the Skyliner gondola station, and you're on your way to Epcot. Makes a lot of sense. You stand in that line, maybe there are a few people in line with you, and you're trying to keep your social distance by standing at those markers on the ground, which we totally expect to see at the station. If the cars are running at full speed, keeping the social distance would mean that you're going to have to move really fast from line to line to line. You're going to have to kind of keep up but not get too close. You see the problem developing here? If Disney kind of puts a little bit more space between those cars, you move forward, you stand at the line, next party goes, you move forward. You know what I mean? They can keep it efficient and running smoothly, but then guests don't have to try and run to keep up with everyone, and then social distancing kind of goes out the window. You see what I mean there? So this may happen. I'm not 100% sure if Disney's going to kind of space out those cars a little bit more or not, perhaps not. But either way, seeing the gondola cars in motion is a great sign that we're going to see them once the parks reopen. It's going to be a very unique time at Walt Disney World for quite some time, and I think I speak for many when I say we can't wait for this to be over so we can get back to regular Walt Disney World. Let's do that. Let's just get regular Walt Disney World back. We will, but it's going to take a little bit of time to get there. We're going to be patient together, make our way through, and look forward to every new magical experience we get to see reopened once all of this is said and done. Those are a few of my thoughts about transportation systems at Walt Disney World when the parks reopen. Let me know yours in the comments below. Do you think the Skyliner system will be running, won't be running? What about the boats, buses at 110% capacity, monorails? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for being a part of the magic with me today. Until next time, have a magical day.